welcome to the Area 1 Young Rider podcast. I am always looking for ways to improve my dressage score, so I am really looking forward to today's interview. Today, I'm speaking with dressage judge Jane Hamlin. Jane, would you mind just introducing yourself? Maybe give the listeners a little background about who you are?
Hi, I'm Jane Hamlin. A lot of you know me. I'm super psyched to be on this podcast. I am a USEF straight dressage judge and a USEF eventing dressage judge, plus an FEI, which is the International Governing Board. I am an FEI dressage judge, or eventing judge, actually. So I have sort of wear lots of hats, but judge a lot of dressage tests. So hopefully I can be some help to y'all.
That's awesome. So, how did you get into the dressage and eventing world?
That's a long time ago. I got to be a dressage judge when a group of us decided we would go through NEDA, which is New England Dressage Association. They were offering a dressage seminar, which kind of was held over a year, like a weekend a year. And we met with various judges, sat down, got critiqued, honed our skills, and then had a testing at the end of it. It was pretty intense, but I learned a ton. So that's sort of how we got started. And I'm very happy I did it.
That's really interesting. So, how would someone become a dressage judge now? Like, is it the same when you became a dressage judge? Has it changed?
It is quite different now, actually. There's certain qualifications you have to have. The USEF rulebook tells you exactly what they are. And then you have to apply, and you have to go through the USDF Learner Judges Program. And you have to pass that before you can get into the regular dressage judging program. But there's a big difference between being a dressage judge and being an eventing judge. Eventing, people don't know this, but eventing judges oversee the whole competition. We judge the dressage, we walk the cross-country course and approve it, we walk the show jumping and improve it. Obviously, we're working as a team with the technical delegate and the course designers, but it's a much more complicated job. And that also, you can do that through the USEF and the USEA. It's a great job. It's a lot of work, but super fun.
That's really interesting. I didn't know that like dressage judges had to oversee all of that. That's really cool.
Eventing judges.
Sorry,
dressage,
yeah.
You can be a straight dressage judge and just come in and do the dressage, right, of the event. But if you're the ground jury, the eventing judge, they're called the president of the ground jury, president of all the other judges, then you oversee pretty much the whole thing. So it's quite different than just being a straight dressage judge.
Huh, that's really cool. So let's just jump right into test riding. So
okay,
obviously, like, if you're gonna go and compete a dressage test, before you even get to the competition, you need to be able to memorize that test. Do you have any advice for those who, like, struggle to memorize all of those different transitions and movements and directions?
Well, I think, I do a lot of teaching, and my students memorize it in various ways. For me, I have to just draw it out. Like, I have a piece of paper, I put the letters down, and then I just draw the pattern out over and over again. And then when I get in bed, I'll lie in bed and I'll visualize how I ride that pattern. Some people have to literally go into a dressage arena or make one in their living room with little pieces of paper and walk through it, saying what they're going to do at that moment. Like at F, you're going to trot. Like you have to say that when you're memorizing it. But I'm kind of a visual. At first, I got to learn it by drawing it, and then I have to visualize it, which also helps me visualize how I'm going to do it well, right?
Yeah. That's cool. I'm definitely a person who likes to physically just walk my test out. That's how I've always done it.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people are like that. And, you can do it in your living room. You can make a little dressage arena and just walk through it. And some people, that just is the only way they can learn it, really.
Yeah. So, what are some ways that you would suggest preparing your horse and yourself, just kind of setting yourself up for a successful dressage test leading up to an event?
So I always tell people, don't try to do at the show what you don't do at home. So when you're schooling and practicing at home, that is what you're going to take into the dressage arena. So your practice at home has to be the quality that you would want to bring into your dressage arena. Some people like sort of, you know, fuss around at home and not really practice and not really school movements and not really have a standard. And then they expect to go to the show and the poor horse has to go in the ring and change and be up to standard of what they think they want in the arena. And that's just not fair. So my riding at home is the same as my riding in the warm up, is the same as my riding in the ring. And I think it's really important and fair because that's the way horses learn.
That's great advice. I really agree. So, what about for like the warm up? Are there any exercises or tactics or anything like that that you'd recommend to set yourself up for a good test?
I think first you need to go watch the warm up. You just need to know where the warm up is, know what the situation's going to be. For instance, at GMHA, the warm up is quite tight. So you need to know that ahead of time so you're not surprised. Make sure when you get to the event, you know where the warm up is, you know where your ring is. I also tell people to go look at your ring and see how it's oriented. Sometimes people get confused when A is sort of at a different end than they expect, and then they get messed up when they ride their test. So I think just it's a great opportunity to hand graze your horse a little bit near the ring. So go and have a look at what's out there and know exactly where you're going. If you warm up, you should have a warm up plan that you've developed at home. I sometimes have like 3 scenarios. I go in, my horse is perfect. My warm up is quick and succinct, and I can stop and take a little break and then pick them up just before I go in. But sometimes you go and your horse is, crazy, like it's just gotten switched on, and you have to find a way to settle it, and that should be something ahead of time. What is your plan? So I sort of have my students have 3 different scenarios about how to cope with their warm up. And then I really suggest that you don't walk around too long just before you go in. I'm better off, and my students are, if they pick up a nice trot, find their rhythm, find what feels right to them, so they can just trot through that gap and around the outside of the arena.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I agree about like, making yourself more familiar with those warm-ups because they really do vary so much.
Exactly. Exactly.
So, when you're judging a dressage test, what is the overall picture that you're looking for throughout the levels? Like, for example, like if you're looking at a novice test, what is the overall picture that you're looking for?
So there's a word we use, and you'll see it at the very bottom of your test when you have. So now we only score 1 collective mark at the very bottom, and harmony. So I want to see that you've done your training. You're on the right direction with correct training. You've done your training at home. You're not just trying to pull something out of nowhere. And it's a harmonious picture. Like the horse looks happy, the rider looks happy. And I sort of think to myself, geez, I'd like to sit on that horse. Or that horse looks well trained. Like that is the overall picture. And we always, when we go to these judges forums, we get given, I probably have 15 different copies of it, the German training scale. And everybody should be familiar with that. And it starts with correct rhythm, and a subcategory of that is tempo, the speed of the rhythm. Like you shouldn't have a pacing walk. You shouldn't have a 4-beat canter. And then you go to suppleness and relaxation. People forget that we want to see a relaxed horse in the ring. We don't want to see a tortured horse. And then next is contact. How does the horse accept the contact? So if you can get a chance to look up the German training scale. That is kind of our Bible in judging.
Yeah, that's really cool. And definitely just like good to like just keep in mind when you're practicing and going into the competition ring. I really agree.
Exactly. And what you don't want to do is go in and do something hugely different than you do at home, because then the horse for sure is going to get tense. And what is the middle thing is relaxation. This second thing up on the training scale is relaxation. So make sure that you have a plan. You stick to your warm-up plan. ride in the arena just like you would ride in your ring at home. And then the horse will stay calm and relaxed, hopefully.
Yeah, exactly. So, obviously, a test will never be perfect. So, what do you think a rider should be putting the majority of their focus into? Should they be focusing more on the connection with the horse and just the overall presentation, or just the movements that are written into that test?
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't know if I have a perfect answer, but every movement, I mean, so it's important when you learn your test to just look it over first. Don't try to memorize it. And each block will have, say, a circle at a certain spot. But your block starts with that circle, but then you have a long distance to the next movement. So
Yeah.
every movement has every block has an essence of the movement. It's like, what is the judge looking for? They're really looking at the circle, but things that happen before the circle and after the circle modify your score. So if your horse is a beautiful 20-meter circle, it's in good rhythm, the horse is bent, it's accepting the contact. But then you leave that circle and you're still, that is still part of the movement. The horse shies or the horse bucks or the horse trips or something, that will modify the beautiful circle score. So it's not the main score, but it does have an influence. So you really need to know to ride from movement to movement. Don't stop riding just because you did your circle or you did your Canada part, because all of that it influences your score.
Yeah, there's just so much that goes into dressage, isn't it? You
Yeah.
have to pay attention to every little detail.
It's quite fun though.
It
I
is.
think it's fun. And it does make you jump better if you do good dressage.
Yeah. So when you are judging a test, is there any big things that you're looking out for? I know we just talked about there's so many little details you're paying attention to, but are there any major things that you look for?
Well, first of all, you have to have pure gaits. And some horses are just born with lateral walks, which they lose the 4 beats of the walk. Some horses are lazy and have a 4-beat canter. So the purity of the gaits is one thing that's huge, right? Lack of relaxation, that's huge. That's not good. Horse fussing with the contact. And at each level, our demands with contact and connection get harder, right? Like,
Mhm.
and when you're doing beginner novice, you just have to have the horse comfortably going towards the contact. As you go up the level, say you're doing intermediate, you're starting to ride collection, the horse has to be on the bit. Preliminary, the horse has to be on the bit. So there's a different degree of connection per level. So we really want to see good basics. As I said, you always can't go wrong looking up the German training scale, and maybe on the Young Rider Facebook page, I can get a copy of that out. So really helpful though.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's just so many big things that you're looking for, but I think that German training skill is really interesting because I've looked at that before and it's been so helpful when I'm riding, especially with dressage.
Exactly. Yeah. And when I teach a clinic, that's how I start. When I have a clinic and people come in for their dressage lesson, I say, oh boy, this horse is going way too fast. Their tempo of their trot is way too fast. I've got to slow it down. So I start there, and then you work on the suppleness and relaxation, that's how I teach a dressage clinic. So it all goes hand in hand.
Yeah. So, do you notice any specific trends or just common mistakes in tests as people people not putting as much thought into a halt or free walk, but are putting more focus into something their 20-meter circle? Is there any trends with that you've noticed?
There used to be a trend of people going way too fast. Like they
Mm.
thought impulsion was speed, and you hear, oh, the horse has to be active, but activity is still within a correct tempo. You don't just go fast.
Yeah.
But that seems to have gotten way better, I think. For a while, in various parts of the country, saw a lot of horses ridden in draw reins. So when they come into the arena, their necks are too short
Mm.
in the connection. That was a trend for a while. That's not so bad in area one. Go area one. That's excellent. But, I think Basically, the biggest problem I see is that people try to create more brilliance or change what they have at home. And then the horse gets tense. When the horse is tense, the scores are going to go down.
Yeah. So we've kind of talked about, having like a tense horse who's, a little more like not worked up, but like kind of do you have any tips for how to get a horse more relaxed, especially when you're off property and stuff? That can be a little tricky for some horses. Do you have any recommendations?
Yep, that is a universal question for all of us. The big thing I can say is get them off the property a lot and not compete. Go to somebody's ring, go to your neighbor's ring and ride. Do your warm up, do your dressage warm up, and then, work your horse in that ring and maybe do a few movements of a test. And then go, I try to get young horses on the trailer every week somewhere. That doesn't mean a competition. You might go to a clinic somewhere, or you might have truck to your trainer and have a lesson, but try to get your horse off property because they don't just miraculously relax. They have to get, especially, thoroughbreds off the racetrack, their memory of going off property is to go racing. So you have to kind of retrain them. And then the other thing I do a lot of is I do a lot of hand grazing. So I get my horse at the show, get it off the trailer, let it hand graze, let it stand around where close to the area that you're going to be showing. Don't just get there late and whip the horse off the trailer and expect them to be relaxed, because that is not going to happen.
No, yeah, and I feel like a lot of eventers will go off property really strictly only to compete and then like go cross country schooling. I don't feel like enough eventers go off property just to do like flat work and dressage movements. And I feel like
And
you said, that could be so helpful.
some people don't have to. Some people have relaxed horses, but
Yeah.
if you have a horse that's tense, you have to teach it that when it goes off property, it's no big deal. It's just another day of practice. It's no big deal. And, that takes time and effort. But, if you belong to Pony Club, your Pony Club rally can help, or if you're going to go for your weekly lesson. But just getting the horse used to going off and not being competitive, I think that's really helpful.
Yeah. So, kind of stepping away from just the riding aspects for a second, when you go and you're judging a dressage test, how much does the presentation of the horse matter? How is that like affecting the scoring? Are like a messy braids, improperly groomed horse? Is that gonna score less than others?
That's such a good question. I believe that you are making a presentation when you go. I think good for you to use that word. You are going and you're presenting yourself and your horse to the judge. And I think it's important that you do the best you can do to turn you and your horse out properly. Doesn't mean expensive clothing and expensive salary, but there's no reason you can't have a clean horse. There's no reason you can't have clean riding boots. There's no reason you can't put your hair in a hairnet. I think that makes a big difference, because it is that polish that shows the judge you care and you've put work into your training. I mean, it does show that. So do we all as judges look at each other and say, oh my God, that horse has, its braids are rubbed out or something, and we're going to take that down 2 points? No. But I do think the overall feel of the professionalism of you guys turned out properly makes a big difference. And at the 1 day events now, you don't have to braid. I think braiding for a recognized event is a good thing. But I'm not going to take down if the mane is nicely pulled and it's well brushed. But bring me if a horse comes around my ring with manure stains, shavings in the tail, dirty flapping tack, that's not in the keepers, that stuff, breeches with big stains on them, that's just, you don't have to do that. You really don't. And I think that you're doing yourself a disservice.
Yeah, definitely. So someone had kind of mentioned this to me the other day, and I was curious. Have you ever given someone a 10 on a movement during their test?
I have not, sadly, but I've given lots of nines, a lot of nines. And I wish I have given a 10. I am actually a bit of a hard judge, so I haven't done that. But there's nothing that makes me happier than to give a 9. Nothing. So when you're going in to ride your test, really believe that the judge wants to give you high score. Like, we want to give high scores. We love nothing more than to have a beautiful, harmonious, well-trained horse and rider and give those nines. So don't think that you're coming in and we're like, well, we want to just give everybody fours. That's absolutely not the truth.
Yeah. So I'm just kind of curious because especially we have a lot of like young riders listening to this podcast. I mean, it's the Young Rider podcast. Do you have any tips for those who are, just starting to get into dressage? Maybe, some advice just to help them start off strong in this area of their riding?
That's a great question. I think, first of all, you need to understand what it is. So maybe just going and watching a couple dressage shows, or going to an event and watching the dressage, just so you understand what it is. I think you should get good help and instruction if you can. And sometimes it's helpful to go to a person that only teaches dressage. There's nothing wrong with that, that specializes in just dressage. Um, but I think understanding what the idea is important. And I think, um, absolutely not letting yourself believe you can't do it. It seems very complicated, but it's actually quite simple. The theory is quite simple behind the lower levels. So you just need to go and understand it, watch the test. And one thing, when you're first riding those dressage, just make sure you know your test well. Like, practice it at home, know your test well, so that you can then concentrate on riding your horse and not worrying about just memorizing the test and whether you got it right.
Yeah, and that's really wonderful advice because I can remember when I first got into dressage and I definitely did not fully understand it because for me personally it was just kind of like I'm gonna circle here, I'm gonna go change direction, I'm gonna walk here, and that was it. I didn't fully understand, like, the connection and the harmony and the rhythm and all of those, what I know now are very important in a dressage test. So,
Right.
really educating yourself on that is so helpful to get a great start. So, really awesome advice.
The other thing that's really good to do, and we do this at Young Rider Camp, is try to get an opportunity to scribe at a little schooling event, or if you don't feel confident doing that, but maybe you could ask a judge if you could sit in there and watch a few tests. So you get it from the judge's viewpoint. And maybe that might not be for the first timers, that might be a little overwhelming, but for you guys that are a little further along, it would be excellent practice to just see it from the judge's viewpoint. First of all, you'll realize the judges are actually quite nice people, most of them. And second of all, you'll be able to see it from C and see what the judge is really looking at.
Yeah, I think just like firsthand experience, like really hands on, is so important. Is definitely going to be some of the most effective ways that you can teach yourself, especially in this sport.
Absolutely.
So, I feel like some eventers can really overlook dressage. How do you think that like we can make dressage more exciting so that young riders can enjoy it more, specifically for the lower levels?
Whew. Well, first of all the work you put into your dressage riding helps your jumping. So it's not wasted. If I teach a clinic and I do a day of dressage and then a day of jumping, I can almost guarantee I know the first day what the problems are going to be the second day with the jumping. So remember that you're not just mindlessly going around in circles. I think what the turning point for me was when I started to really love dressage is realizing how you actually can change a horse's body and put muscle on and make them better athletes and make them sounder. That made it so much more exciting because I was at that point riding a lot of horses off the track, and gosh, they would come with these little scrawny ewe-necks and you could put all this muscle on in the top line. It was so cool to realize that just with good dressage work, you could change a horse's strength and physique. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. Dressage, it's so like cool and pretty to watch, but also knowing like just like you said, like how much it can impact a horse, it just makes it so interesting.
Agreed. Totally agreed.
So we kind of just talked about this, but personally, just having like an understanding of what goes into judging a test that can really help a rider to improve their dressage. And Area 1 Young Riders actually offers opportunities to young riders just to shadow different jobs at events for the day, and this does actually include dressage judges. So, how do you think like shadowing a judge could help a rider grow upon their dressage skills? I know we just talked about this, but if you have anything else to expand upon that.
I think if you get the opportunity, you should take it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, I actually, when I judged young riders in Kentucky, the big young rider championship, and they did do that program. It was wonderful. I had a kid sit with me, go around the whole event with me, because remember, the eventing judge does more than just the dressage. And I think it just gave them so much experience, and they were wonderful. So if you get that opportunity, you get in there and sharpen your pen there, because you really can learn so much. And I know, like I said, at Young Rider Camp, we do offer that. And I think that's really a really good opportunity to see it from that judge's viewpoint.
Yeah, definitely. So, I think we're going to wrap it up here for tonight. But do you have any finishing thoughts you'd like to share? I know dressage is so vast and there's so many different points to make. So, if you have anything to add, please do.
I think, you have to learn to love it. I mean, I started out just like you guys, like, oh, I have to do dressage. And I think early on, I started to really see what a difference it could make with the horses. And I've learned now it's a passion. Obviously, I love it. So I think it's a mindset that you have to look at it a different way. You're the horse's personal trainer. Like, you're the physical therapist of that horse, and you have a chance to make or break his body or make him a stronger athlete. So take it seriously and enjoy it. It's a gift, and I think if you enjoy it, the horse will enjoy it more too.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you so much for chatting with me today. I feel like this was a great interview, and I personally am definitely learning a lot from today. I think I'll be able to take a lot of what we spoke about today and, apply it to future rides and competitions. So, thank you so, so much.
I totally enjoyed it.
Thank you so much for listening to this month's Area 1 Young Rider podcast episode. Jane had some awesome tips and advice on the topic of dressage tests, so I hope you learned something that you can take into Area 1's upcoming show season. As always, we will end this the way every cross-country course starts. Have a great ride.